Je luistert naar een nieuwe aflevering van Over Eten, de podcast voor nieuwsgierige eters en drinkers. Mijn naam is Tijn de Schacht. Welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van Over Eten. Er bestaat een soort tweeledigheid bij ons als het gaat over het Midden-Oosten. Enerzijds zijn we verzot op de smaken, geuren en kleuren, en anderzijds is het heel vaak moeilijk om de mensen uit die streek een plaats te geven. In aflevering 15 spraken we hier al over met Obada, een Syrische vluchteling die met koken verbintenis en kansen probeert te creëren. Mijn gasten van vandaag ontvluchtte samen met haar familie de burgeroorlog in Libanon en kwam in Antwerpen terecht. Ze groeide hier verderop en ging nadien in sterrenkeukens werken. Gedreven, gedisciplineerd en altijd onder druk. De boog kan niet altijd gespannen blijven staan, dus liet ze de culinaire wereld kortstondig los. Maar niet te lang, want waar het hart van vol is, je weet hoe het gaat. Ze begon een eigen bedrijfje om culinaire events en catering mee te kunnen doen en koos volop voor haar eigen roots, de Libanese Keuken. Beirut Nights was de naam van haar eerste kookevents op bijzondere locaties met rijkelijk gedekte tafels, aangepaste muziek en de gastvrije sfeer van het Midden-Oosten. Ondertussen lanceerde ze ook Atelier Sur in Antwerpen, waar ze Libanese producten maakt, workshops geeft, cheftables experiences aanbiedt en ondertussen ook een kookboek, ook Beirut Nights, genaamd, uitbracht. Ze wordt door sommige media onze Vlaamse Ottolenghi genoemd, maar ze is vooral de culinaire ambassadrice van de Libanese Keuken. Ghina Bazzi, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you agree that you are the culinary ambassador for the Lebanese cuisine here?
Yes, I absolutely would. Not that there's not space for anybody else to be an ambassador for Lebanon, but for me it's a personal mission to represent my country and to obviously share my recipes and share our culture through these recipes. But my speciality as a chef has always been classic French and modern cuisine. So it was a very difficult choice for me because it's a completely different technique, it's different presentation, it's a little less sophisticated, let's say. But I felt like with all the issues that my country has faced, it was my personal duty to bring my country to light.
Let's rewind a little bit and let's get going back to the beginning, because love for cooking usually is passed on via your mom, via your family. Your grandmother probably, I've read in interviews, also has a big role to play in how you appreciated food. In one interview, you mentioned that you were peeling garlic at the age of 4.
Yes.
So were you always present in the kitchen?
Absolutely. I grew up, especially, with my mother. We lived in Sierra Leone before we came to Antwerp. So it wasn't directly escaping war, but we've, as Lebanese people, as many Lebanese people have been unable to live in Lebanon due to the 16 years of civil war. So we lived in Sierra Leone, and my father had found his success over there with trading like many Lebanese people. And so the women in my family, because of this constantly moving around, they always brought home and atmosphere to wherever we lived. And so the lady of the house, be it the grandmother or in my case my mother, would know how to cook everything. So from classic French recipes to Indian dishes. Sierra Leone was colonized by the British people. So we have all these influences, and I grew up with all of these flavors, and I grew up with a mother who could, clean an entire cow with assistance, but she could debone everything. So I grew up seeing all of this, and tasting, and so it was a huge inspiration. It wasn't an inspiration for the other women in my family, but for me, I saw such power in, as a woman, being able to bring together so many people, friends and family, and on a weekly basis, that I aspired to be like these women. And so that was the start.
That was the start. So then later on you grew up, it stuck with you. You didn't do a culinary school, but you
No.
did end up working in restaurants.
Yes.
Did you just knock on somebody's door and go
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I know I don't have any qualifications,
No, I
but
said
I
I
still want to
did.
work here"?
I said I had some qualifications. I was like, yeah, I worked in a restaurant in Lebanon. And he was like, really? I said, yes, I worked in I had never worked in any restaurant, actually. It was a restaurant called Minerva. And the owner's father was someone which I found out later that was giving out the Michelin star. So you can imagine the level. And we had like a very old equipe of classic French. So and every time I talk about it, I have goosebumps because I worked with a chef that has worked with Bocuse and Alain Ducasse, and he's done, everything you can imagine. So, and he would turn his ice cream twice a day. So for both services, he was a perfectionist. And every evening he'd be on his knees in his fridge, cleaning every corner. So, it's not only cooking I learned with him. I learned respect, and I learned how to become more humble, actually. For me, it's very personal being a chef.
Did they ever find out that you didn't work in the restaurant? In Lebanon?
Maybe now I think they found out when I was learning, because I had to learn being in a kitchen with other chefs that had been to Kokzada and other great schools. Everyone knew the classics, how to make a pomme chateau, how to clean duck, and so I had to learn it there.
But when you say classics, these are the classics for French cuisine,
French, yes.
Or French-based cuisine,
yes.
Like we have here in Europe.
Yes.
It is probably very different from basics and classics in Lebanese cuisine.
Absolutely, but when as a chef, when you know your classic French cuisine, it actually, in my opinion, professionally, it starts from there, where you learn how to make a stock. In Lebanon, obviously, we have different flavors in our stock, but we use that stock as a base to cook rice, or to use, in French cuisine, maybe they would use it in a sauce, or they would use it to cook the potatoes, whatever. But you're taking flavor out of something, putting it into something else, and that's where the richness comes from classic French cuisine, in my opinion. So it was a very important step that I took. And so today, when I cook, I always use that base. So the understanding of those techniques, and I feel like that's where you can strive for perfection. So I have a lot of respect and passion towards the French cuisine.
And after that first restaurant, you moved on to a couple of others, always
Yes.
in the Michelin-starred environment, people who really, really knew their stuff.
Yeah.
I take it that in every restaurant you saw the same drive and professionalism
Absolutely.
and motivation. But still, at a certain point, it got to a breaking point for you.
Absolutely. I saw it, what I saw in the first restaurant, so in the classic French, they didn't want a star. He was a disciple of Escoffier, and their aim was never to have a star. It was perfection. They cooked for the top, and they still cook for the top in Belgium. But the aim was never to have a star. With the other chefs, all of them had the classic French base, except for in Torino, where I worked for a man called Libanese Keuken, who's known to be, internationally as like the genius of cooking. He's also, I started to learn about a different mindset while cooking. It became something else. Very interesting. But the breaking point, going back to your question, came because I had reached almost 30, the classic, I'm a woman, I live in the kitchen, which I love, by the way, but I thought it's pretty limiting if your life means that you will have to marry someone in the horeca. Like I couldn't see, and I'm a person who even today, and everything I do today is about being also present for my family. So I have my passions, but I also want to be present for the people around me because I also thrive on
and especially
coziness.
In the environment you're in, the Michelin-starred environment, It starts early in the morning and ends late at night.
And I love it.
With little to no breaks in the middle.
Yeah.
If you want the traditional family time, it's very hard to combine.
Absolutely. And it's also high stress. You know, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, very high level catering with fantastic chefs, but it's stress, you know, it's high level, but the stress is insane. So I look at these people and I can jump into a kitchen like that and I fit in instantly, but and it's nonstop, but I look at them and I think, my God, I mean, there's no way you can live a healthy life like this. It's also very unhealthy because it's really a lot of stress. So I just made different choices based on all of those things. But my heart is in cooking. So when I cook for 15, 16 people at my atelier, this is how I communicate, you know?
So you left the industry, but the passion for cooking was still there. So it feels to me like you used that time to figure out how you can fit cooking into your life and how you can balance it all out. Like you said, you want to balance it. The balance was off to one side, the professional life. How long did it take for you to figure these things out?
It took me a couple of years, and it took a lot of soul searching, as they say, and I've been seeing like a sort of a coach with where we really worked on it, and it was I think it took a full year before I got to the idea of having the events, and they instantly picked up, and I knew that before the Beirut Nights events, like I wasn't ready. I hadn't cooked professionally in years, so I just put the whole thing together. I used my network. I got people, I mean, excited. They all bought a ticket, and I basically pulled the whole thing off, and I kept pulling it off. And Lebanese, by the way, it's very funny. Lebanese is my home kitchen. So professionally, it was a completely different challenge to start bringing out meza. You know, it sounds like it's easier, but I mean, to bring out 15 dishes and to put them on a table all at the same time for like 65 people, which is what I did actually, because I wanted to have more than a break even, a little bit of a business person. But it was a huge challenge, and it was also very difficult, really, like I said at the beginning, very difficult to go from the high-end cuisine where you have a little bit of, I don't know, caviar and mousseline on your plate, and to start giving hummus, which is something so cheap but so delicious, and it took me years to have a good recipe. So I did a lot of soul searching, and today, let's say in this year, I finally have, how can I say, now I really feel the joy of all the work and all the struggle I had to come back to my truth, actually.
Well, before you can harvest, you have to sow. So that means you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And indeed, if you work in these professional French-based cuisine kitchens, letting go of that to start something else, it is a bit of a jump into the deep end.
Yeah.
But, well, you grew up in a family with all these Lebanese recipes and your heritage. It feels to me like it shouldn't have been that weird to get those recipes.
Absolutely, yeah. No, to get the recipes wasn't difficult. I mean, it's like everything is a one call away, you know. My mother has like an encyclopedia of recipes, and my aunt, so my the sister of my father, she was also a great cook. But I mean, the certain women in my family, like that aunt, they had help in the house. And so when they would make dinners or lunches once a week or more, it would be like, I mean, restaurant level buffet, you know, on silverware, and beautiful. They would cook for days, you know, and with the technique, you know, everything from tripe. I don't know what it's called
Tripe,
in Dutch.
In
Tripe.
French.
En in Nederlands?
Ingewanden, denk ik.
Ingewanden?
Ingewanden,
Yeah, anyway.
Darm
Yeah, nee, niet darm en maag. Echt like the real... Anyway, they stuff it with rice. It's like a delicatessen, and they cook it like in a meat stock. So it takes days, you know. And also the handmade vine leaves. So you have to understand, I mean, this is like, you know how much honor that would give the people that come to your home? Like, wow, I just spent 3 to 4 days preparing this, even with help, even if you have 3, 4 people living in your, or, you know, or coming to work in your home, it's honoring the people. And this is what I want to do with my work. And every time I cook, I go through these memories, actually. So it's a very personal thing for me.
What I feel that you learn as a chef, as a professional cook, is how to break down recipes.
Exactly.
And to assemble them at the right time so they come out nicely. So in that way, your career in all these starred restaurants has helped you to set up
Totally.
the events, right?
Absolutely.
You understood how to make the puzzle.
Totally, totally. I mean, the other day I had 14 people at my table, and I did it basically alone. I mean, I was serving, they had 4 courses. It was not à la carte, but I mean, it was a menu. But of course, you learn how to organize, you learn how to cook. And I thought, wow, imagine I had like an équipe. I would be like having miracles coming out of the kitchen, No, but really, I'd be pulling rabbits out of hats. But for now, I have a small bunch of helpers. So I learned a lot. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it again, and I would have started earlier.
Even earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I was 23.
Maybe going to culinary school then.
Yes, maybe. But I'm not a great student. I get very bored. And I get bored very easily, and I needed the action of a real kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's talk a little bit more about the Lebanese cuisine, because we've been talking about you for a bit. We know your ties to the cuisine itself. When we think of Lebanese cuisine, what we think of often is the kebab shop that serves shawarma and falafel, and maybe a couple of other side dishes like manakish, which a lot of people don't seem to order for whatever reason.
It's strange, huh?
But it's so delicious.
I know, it's odd.
Super delicious. But if we look at Lebanese cuisine, what should we think of? Because it's much more than what I just described.
Well, what would we think of? Like you said, I mean, people don't really have access to that here in Belgium. I mean, not a lot. It's growing now. I would think of obviously the variety of flavor that you have. And like I was discussing with you before we started the interview, is the acidity that we have. We use a lot of lemon in our food. Not only lemon, but we also use pomegranate syrup. We use the seeds. So there's sweet, there's sour, there's crunchy. We have the variation. And for example, what I put in my book are things that you will not have in restaurants. So our home cooking is also very interesting. We use a lot of rice. We also work a lot with grains. We use a lot of cinnamon also in our cuisine, and 7 spices, which have nutmeg and ginger. So there are a lot of flavors and things that people haven't discovered yet. And that's actually what I want to do with my cooking. We also have raw meats that we eat, which is typical all throughout Lebanon. But where I come from, in the south of Lebanon, we're specialized in making, it's called frake. I didn't put it in the book. It's basically...
Well, here's an idea for book number 2.
Yes.
Let's write that down.
Shock the people with the raw meat. But no, it is absolutely, there are some book authors doing that, international Lebanese book authors, where they go to little villages and they talk about these things. I grew up eating these things,
But raw meat is not such a shock, because we have préparé, we have tartare, ground pork, ground beef. It's not such a shock as for other countries. Like if you would do that in the United States, people would be all up in arms. Like, you cannot have raw meat. But Belgium's fine with it. France
Absolutely.
is fine with it. So
absolutely.
Bring it. What is it?
So it's basically, the traditional way of making it is by getting the meat and putting it on a marble, and then grinding it actually on the marble. So it's 2 pieces of marble, and then that creates like a sort of elasticity. And that would be mixed with pieces of fat actually from the meat, or if you don't have that specific piece of fat, you would use butter. And then we would mix it, either we would eat it naturally like that with very nice olive oil. Usually it's good quality olive oil. We eat it with fresh mint, fresh bread, radishes, raw onion. So it's very fresh. And again, you have the ritual of someone making fresh food for you. It has to be eaten fresh. This is not something like, oh, I made it yesterday. It's really someone who is going to sit there, who is clean, also because they're really into hygiene, and the Lebanese woman. or for example, the non-religious, because in Lebanon it's quite liberal, so they also drink it with ara. Also, for the ara is like ouzo.
Okay.
It's a kind of. Have you tried it?
I've tried ouzo, which is a anise flavored
Exactly.
spirit.
That's it. So that's what we drink it with a bit of ice. And then you have different variations of that same raw meat dish where we mix in burghul, which is a kind of wheat. And that also has to be eaten almost à la minute because it's kind of, with the moisture, it becomes like swollen. So, and you don't want that. Also, lots of olive oil, lots of bread, and it's a whole thing, you know. Like if my mom's making it, half the city will come and, oh, please, I need. And once you've had it once, I served it to the fantastic photographer of the book, Bram and Els, and they just adored it, you know. It's all quite heavy food, but it's delicious.
Yeah, delicious food is always going to come down with a lot of pleasure to be
Absolutely, and it's really it's a ritual, you know. And she has to do it by hand, and you have to, just when it's ready, you run to the table and you eat it. So you know.
So you have to really be there in the moment to
Absolutely.
enjoy it. What sounds to me, what sounds interesting to me is that you've mentioned a lot of different spices. You mentioned olive oil and butter. You've mentioned bread. You've mentioned all things that seem to be from all over the place. And in a way, it makes sense because the Middle East, Lebanon, and other countries were essential in the trading
Absolutely.
of spices from all over the world before the Columbian exchange.
Yes.
Is that is very much present still, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's also present in the Lebanese. I mean, the Phoenicians, you know. Actually, I mean, Sur is where the biggest Phoenician metropolis was in the south of Lebanon, actually. Sur, which is the name of my business, which I'm still developing. I'm not in a rush. And we are traders. Just like we also spoke about before the interview started, is that we've gone to Mexico and to Brazil, and we're everywhere, you know, all parts of Africa, and we integrate. Even though I don't speak perfect Dutch, ik spreek Nederlands, but we integrate within where we live, you know.
There's also a big Lebanese community in Canada, I believe.
Absolutely, they're everywhere. We are everywhere. You know, we are also we take risks, and you know, when you haven't been able to live in your country due to the constant war and instability, you kind of, I mean, that's why, I mean, we integrate in different countries, but we still have home through the food. You know, I relive my home and my culture and the things that I miss through my food. It's every day. It's a process. So
that's it's interesting to see how people hang on to food to remember where they come
from. Absolutely. I mean, and I've lived in Antwerp all my life. I mean, most of my life after West Africa, and so.
With a little excursion to Italy.
With a little, so efkes. And then, which was beautiful, by the way. And I still go to Italy very often. We go to Sicily. My husband is half Italian. My children speak Italian. So I have a very strong connection. Italy gives me the feeling of home, like Lebanon, in the sense, because it's the Mediterranean, especially the southern parts of Italy, and Sicilian. As different as the cuisine is, it still has a lot of similarities. I'd like to experiment with that even in the next book. I'd like to follow this whole Phoenician route, in fact. They've been everywhere, you know, the Phoenicians. So I'd like to continue my search and my food combination.
So it sounds to me like you've started here, Antwerp, gone back to your roots.
Yeah.
And it's like you want to go down the rabbit hole and find out where the roots of Lebanese cuisine in general are.
Absolutely.
Much more than your own.
Absolutely. My roots are here. I mean, my children are, you know, half Belgian, and even like I said, obviously the French cuisine is very similar to the Belgian cuisine. So at home, I also make stump and worst and apple puree and kip and croquettes. I know them all, you know, I know all the classics. That's not very classic Belgian, but I make bourre pâté, I make foie gras and terrine. I adore these things, you know, and mayonnaise and the frietjes and the properly made frietjes and the mosselen. I adore that food. It's just that this is very personal on the sense that it's my roots, it's my heritage. And I feel like Lebanon needs this. With all the trouble we keep going through, it's needed. So there is a movement happening now with the younger generation of Lebanese.
It feels to me like for a long time, as I said in the intro, that people have kind of looked down sort
Absolutely.
of on migrants from
Absolutely.
Lebanon and neighboring countries. And your generation, younger generations are now, look, this is who we are. Fuck off.
Absolutely.
You're taking a stand. Like, this is who we are. This is what we have to offer, whether it's through art or through food.
Absolutely.
You're just somewhat taking control of the narrative.
Absolutely.
And it's also something you've said in interviews before, that you've stepped up to the plate because you want to represent Lebanon and you don't want somebody non-Lebanese to represent
Absolutely.
Lebanon.
It's been done too much within the region. And I feel like, I mean, now you have like an uprising of food coming from neighboring countries. But I mean, truth be told, it's just not as good. I mean, are you kidding me? Are we really gonna, you know? I'm not gonna get political, but we have to. And there are not many Lebanese chefs. You know, what's funny is that it has never been a profession that has been respected. Of course, the mother is respected and the women are respected for what they do. And like I explained, all of that. But as a profession, it's never been respected. So I feel like this is the reason we haven't had that many chefs. This is my opinion. I mean, this is what I feel. But now there is a movement. Things are happening, you know, especially because of the instability of Lebanon. You know, I don't know how they will make it out of the current situation. So... But things, we have to take matters into our own hands.
Mm-hmm. And also, you did a test for a newspaper where you tried 10 different types of hummus. Hummus definitely is one of the dishes that's most strongly associated with that part of the world.
Yeah.
But it also feels to me like it's an easy product to be culturally appropriated.
Of course.
And is that one of the reasons why you stepped up and was like, hey, I'm Lebanese, this is my cuisine.
Yes.
Look at this.
But I mean, it's great that they're reaching out, you know, even with the program that will come out. It's fantastic that in such a short period, I've become a reference. You know, it's one of the first things I say in my book. I'm not pretending to know it all or to be the best. This is not an ego trip for me. It's just that, I mean, we grew up eating hummus, not at home, by the way. We eat a bit of hummus at home, but I mean, in the best restaurants in Lebanon, you cannot compare. I cannot even make it. I don't know what it is. Is it the temperature? Is it the types of lemons? Is it the type of chickpea? But I just don't get the same result here. So it's really, I mean, hummus is like a staple on a table, you know? And the specific type of olive oil that you put on the hummus. So yeah, there are many other dishes, but it makes sense to reach out to a Lebanese chef to taste hummus. And the stuff you get in supermarkets is nothing like the real stuff.
So we have to come to you to really discover hummus.
Yes, or buy the book. Buy the book and learn the rest of the recipe in the book is the real recipe. So,
just not as good as the restaurants in Lebanon, you said.
Because they have different types of, the commercial hummus of today is made in a very fast blender, kind of like that machine, the Thermomix. Mm-hmm. The blade and how fast it goes affects the texture. And so you get this like very fluffy, light, creamy texture. The classic hummus was made with a mortar and a pestle. So actually it's not as smooth. But I really love the
I also think the
version.
difference there is that a Thermomix or a blender, it cuts.
Yes.
Whereas a mortar and pestle, it grinds.
Yes.
So you release much more oils.
Exactly.
and it's the essential oils
Yeah.
of the chickpea
Yeah.
that give you that flavor, I
Yeah.
think.
Yes.
And that's where the big difference is.
Absolutely.
In your book, you advise people to buy a mortar and pestle as well. Then,
No, I don't.
Well,
I didn't cover that.
well, let's just say that here on this podcast, you're saying that everybody should have a mortar and pestle for their
Absolutely.
hummus.
Yes, absolutely. Or for everything, actually, for garlic, it's just good to have one. We have them in wood. Actually, we don't have every Lebanese household has the one in wood because we use a lot of garlic in our food. We finish like our soups, for example, the lentil soup in the book, really delicious. Very healthy. Even my children adore it. When the lentil soup is finished, we put like 5-6 cloves of garlic, fresh olive oil, and lemon juice. Can you imagine how healthy?
It's also a lot of garlic.
Yeah, but it works. I don't put, by the way, like when I cook my dinners, I don't use a lot of garlic. This is, again, coming from the classic French cuisine. So I would use garlic maybe in one dish on the whole mesa because the experience is important too. When you go to a restaurant, it's not a snack, I would prefer that the clients feel lighter when they leave.
You've mentioned, the atelier a couple of times.
Yeah.
What you're doing there is much more than just a restaurant.
Yes.
It's a chef's table
Yeah.
experience. You're always there
Yeah.
in a very intimate setting.
Yes.
How would that compare to, for example, your visit to a Lebanese restaurant in Beirut?
Well, I mean, in Lebanon, for example, on Sundays, lots of families go all throughout Lebanon, but especially in the mountains or at the seaside, because Lebanon is, you have the sea, you have the mountains, and you also have, in fact, these huge tables. I mean, even bigger than mine. Mine's 6 meters. They have 12-meter tables. So you go with your whole family. They put out a full mesa of the freshest food because there's such a turnover in these restaurants, and it's just a family day. So it's a lunch that starts, at 1 and ends at 6 or 5:30, and then they get ready for dinner, which starts later. It's all about food, the whole thing, and you're sitting with these gorgeous views, very similar to the Italian family vibe, also in the mountains in Italy where they eat polenta. But I mean, the richness that we have on that table, I mean, it's just uncomparable. And that's when I also realized, I thought, wow, okay, I mean, I've traveled, I've met these chefs, I've eaten in the best places. But this kind of like wealth of sharing and this amount of like generosity, you just don't find it anywhere else. And the variation from the tabbouleh, the parsley salad, and the fattoush with the crispy bread, and the hummus, and the grilled aubergines, and the fried aubergine. I mean, you can't move on the table, and you just eat, and you share, and, my mouth is watering.
Yeah, I noticed.
I'm just so hungry.
I enjoy the passion with which you speak. It's,
I mean, it's not an easy job. You need to love it.
Absolutely.
It's and it's not how can I say, it's not easy, it's physically difficult, you have to love it.
So on one hand, you have all these mesa dishes that are being put on the table in a restaurant environment, but we also associate a lot of like shawarma as to be somewhat of a street food. Is that the case in Lebanon or not really?
It is, but I mean, a real shawarma is layered marinated meat. So you need to know how to marinate the meat. And the way I do it is I put a quick version there in the book, but it's with the 7 spices, the onions, the right oil, acidity, and you layer these good pieces of meat with a good fat content, and then you layer it on a what's it called?
On the spit.
On the spit, and then you slow cook the meat. So it's not kebab, it's not processed meat. A real shawarma is with a real tahini sauce also, tomatoes, it's with onions, it's with sama and fresh parsley. I mean, get that right. It's not just like a good burger. I mean, hello.
I mean, McDonald's sometimes is nice, but a good burger is a different thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at someone in Veurne. I forgot the name, but I really...
Pickle?
Yeah, I really want to check that. I saw the pictures. I was like, how far is it?
It's not that far from here, actually.
No? Okay.
No, it's half an hour drive.
Okay. Okay. I'll see if I can go. But so it's just a burger. It's not just a shawarma, it's an art. Just like falafel is an art. Cooking it in the right oil and making sure the oil is clean. And even fritters are an art.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. There's a lot of bad fries in the world.
Absolutely.
But we've perfected it because we've got that attention to detail.
Of course.
And it's similar to falafel. For people that still don't know what that is, can you explain what falafel is?
So falafel is made from chickpeas that are not cooked. Chickpeas and also fool, fava beans. I have to start to think what the name is. I will remember. And you can, so the Egyptians use both those type of pulses. We use the chickpea. We mix it with parsley, coriander, onion, garlic. Everyone has their own mix. And then you make them into little balls in a special falafel mold, which I sell on my website, by the way. No, I mean, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just saying you can buy that mold and you just put it into fresh oil, fry it, and we eat it with something called tarator, which is the same sauce that's served with the shawarma, which is basically tahini, lemon juice. If you want, you can add garlic and a bit of water to thin it. And it's eaten also with the flatbread. So that's falafel.
And it's also a street food kind of
Absolutely.
thing. So there, whenever you go in whatever city in Lebanon,
you're
going to find plenty of vendors.
Yeah, you will find the falafel, you will find the shawarma. And there's also specialized shops and different types of meat sandwiches. I know the south of Lebanon quite well. I know Beirut, but for food, the south of Lebanon is really well known.
So the best food is not to be found in the capital, but is found where you're from, Sur. That's what you're saying, basically.
No, not necessarily. Beirut has very high-level restaurants, and they also have great street food. So no, I mean, you find it everywhere. And like I said, in the mountains, it just, you go to specific areas for specific things, you know? I know a great place for falafel, and I know a great place for these kind of very slow-cooked beef sandwiches, similar to shawarma. Many people come from all over Lebanon to the south of Lebanon just to eat that specific sandwich. It's called fatayil. Very similar to the Mexican, really. I mean, they have the slow cooking of the meat. Like I said, the acidity, the freshness, the onions. It's soul, you know?
Yeah, before we started this interview, I have a small collection of books, of cookbooks, mostly about Mexican cuisine.
Yeah.
And so we started discussing that and the history of tacos al pastor, which is a world-famous dish now, but it has Lebanese roots.
Yeah.
And so there is similarities in the acidity of Mexican cuisine and Lebanese cuisine. That's what we've discussed. So this is the reference for people that don't understand where this Mexican reference comes from.
Yeah, not only the acidity, like the green herbs. I mean, the mints and the coriander and the parsley and the raw tomatoes, for example. And okay, of course, we eat guacamole in Lebanon, but I mean, you know, you look, when you've been cooking for many years, and I've had the opportunity to work with the great chefs and thinkers, you look at food differently. Like, you break it down and you think, oh my God, this is so similar. Just like in Sicily, they make the arancini, which is kind of like the Lebanese kibbe, actually. The movement is the same. We make it with meat and burghul, they make it with rice, but they also stuff it and they deep fry it. So it's all similar, and you can see the influence, you know? It's,
the cross-pollination of cultures in the Mediterranean region is very apparent.
Absolutely. And they have the caponata, and we have something called the msa'a'a, which is, so the caponata is with the aubergines, and they make it a bit acidic, and they add raisins too, acidic and sweet. We have it very similar, but we use the chickpeas, for example. So we have a lot of similarities, you know, except the pasta.
I mean, techniques are easily transferred, but produce is not. So it seems to me like a lot of techniques have been adopted around the Middle Eastern, the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Oof, that was difficult.
Yeah.
Around the Mediterranean region, but then used whatever was available in every different location.
Absolutely. Food is great. I was just thinking this could take ages.
Yeah, food
and
is,
I'm just so hungry now.
food is absolutely
All
amazing.
of a sudden.
That's why I'm doing this podcast, to
Yeah.
share the love of food, but also to learn a thing or two. When you first started with the idea of Beirut Nights, the events that you did, what was the first menu that you thought of? What was something that was super essential for you to have on a Lebanese menu?
Well, what I threw out, threw out of the kitchen, I didn't really throw out, but I had to have for the first event, I felt like I had to do the classics. I also couldn't make it too complicated for myself, even though it was extremely complicated. Because with the Beirut Nights, so this is pre-corona, I found the venue, sold the tickets, did the marketing, I did everything. I got a bunch of friends together that I used to work with in the Horeca, so you have to understand, and they all stepped in. And I'm so deeply grateful to my friends that are still there to do the tables. And I was like, you do the table and you do this. And we still did something extremely professional. But there was just so much support and so much help. And so much love, even the people that came, that, of course, what was on the table was extremely important because I'm a chef, but it was also a concept that I was bringing out. It was also a relaunch of Ghina into the cooking, like who is Ghina and who cares? Like, so what, you did 10 years in the kitchen, who is this woman, And I just felt like it was the right time. The Lebanese kitchen is coming out, and I thought, okay, I cannot see one more menu say Lebanese or say tabbouleh, and it's just not tabbouleh, and it's, like, guys, stop, please.
How often did that happen to you, where you stepped into something that said Lebanese and then you were
Very often.
very disappointed?
Very often. Today still, you want to sell something in food, and you just put Lebanese. There's food chains going around calling themselves Lebanese, and again, I have a lot of respect for everything in the Horeca. I don't go there and start breaking down the menu and calling them morons. But you're calling it Lebanese, Can we call it something else, please? It's not Lebanese, So it's kind of like how every culture, the Italians, Belgians, everyone takes it personal, like the Belgian fries. They're not French. We're not. Are you kidding me?
Italians and their pizza.
Italian
They
and their
take it very
pizza and their
personal.
pasta and the al dente and all of that. It's so important. You don't. So for me, especially again, because of the connotation and because of the history and because of what we're going through, it's very personal. It's extremely personal, and there's a lot more to offer, and I hope that it's shared with me and through other fantastic Lebanese chefs.
So you had your food on one hand, and then the experience, which is, it's connected, but you cannot put it apart. You can eat hummus alone, but if you're going to a Beirut a location that's called, or an event that's called Beirut Nights, you expect much more than just a plate of hummus, obviously.
I also wanted to put my love for music, and which honestly, I would really like to go back to have more Beirut Nights, but we had the Corona in between. Not that it's an excuse, but I had to focus on other things like the book and like my brand and my chef's tables at the moment. So it's much smaller. But what I want to do is to have live music, and with the same concept, which is always pretty large tables, even if it's 6 or 8 people or very long tables. I want to put people together. I felt like there was a very big need. I've never personally had any issues in Belgium with racism or not feeling welcome or being looked down on. Maybe because I'm extremely proud. But I know it exists. And so I felt there was a need to put different people from different walks of life together at tables around food. Because eating meza means you have to ask the guy next to you to pass you, You can't just sit there
you have to make connection to eat meza.
That's it. And still today I see it around my tables, and I feel like it's still a bit difficult in certain parts. Here in Belgium to put people together, but I'm going to persist, and I really, really believe that something will happen. The right people will start coming together, and very interesting conversations will happen around these tables, you know?
It's funny that you mentioned this because I just came back from an internship in a restaurant in Mexico, and what they have is just one long table. So whether you want it or not, you are overhearing the conversation next to you, and sometimes you just jump in or you get involved in the conversation by the people next to you, and it's always a magical moment because
beautiful.
The food on the table breaks down that barrier, that kind of shame that we have that to talk to strangers.
Of course.
And it's always a beautiful moment when that barrier breaks down. And definitely in an environment where you say people have to share things, it's broken down even faster.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed friendships developing at your table and people coming back?
People coming back always, because I mean, have I noticed friendships? Not yet. I haven't noticed friendships because sometimes
you did notice a difference in
interaction.
The beginning of the night
absolutely.
Versus the end.
And sometimes I looked at certain clients and I thought, oh my God, they don't look very comfortable. And the end, they were the most open. And oh my God, I really want to come back and I want to bring friends. And so it's not just cooking. Of course, if I had to focus just on having a restaurant and like having a very big equipe, which would be a dream for me personally, professionally, but how it's so satisfying to leave my evening, even though I'm completely exhausted, but to know that you touched people, you know, in this world where everything's like behind screens and, you know.
Especially in the professional world of cooking, there's often the door between the kitchen and the diners where it's literally separated.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to see sometimes what is going on.
Yeah, my
in
kitchen's
the
open.
Hall. Yeah. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I assume that you also come out and you talk to people as well.
I'm also working on, because it's pretty new, the chef's table. So I'm working on ways to become, how can I say, better planning so that I can spend more time also at the table. But I mean, it's important that I cook, you know. And of course, because it's a very small table, the price has to go up. And I want to try to get the price down and still give people the same experience. So it's all one big challenge.
This is where the business side of you has to come out.
Absolutely. I mean, of course.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a business.
It's still a business.
We love cooking and we love food. But if you want to survive, you still have to make some money somewhere.
No, of course. And what I mean by that, that I brought it in, is that I want to make it more accessible, you know. My menus start at 70 euros and not everybody can pay that. For me, it's extremely natural to pay 70 or more for food. But of course, it's not just meza that I serve. I do a mix of all the influences I have on the table.
So what does that mean exactly?
That means I could have like some dishes inspired by a great Lebanese chef. Is called Greg Malouf, fantastic chef. So I do like labneh with the saffron, and then I would have marinated aubergines in a Lebanese way, but then served a little bit more like funky and Italian. Or what I did the other day was like the same labneh, but with roasted butternut and a compote of pear, and just so there's a mix. And then there's a classic Lebanese salad on the table, but then you have grass-fed beef cooked perfectly with a sage butter. So, but it all works, you know. And I was very inspired in Denmark, so I try to put in a bit of everything so they can taste, but it still works, you know.
So, what I hear is that Lebanese cuisine is not fixed; it evolves still, and even in your hands, you just take your influences, and infuse that into whatever you're making.
Absolutely.
While still being Lebanese at heart.
Yeah. The other day I had a dinner and it's funny because I didn't use anything specifically different. I made risotto with burrata and truffle jus, and I made a miqui of salmon with a bunch of herbs. Very simple and very clean. And again, like the meat with the topinambour, so it's all pretty European. And all the guests were like, they were amazed. But they also said, like, there's something Lebanese in there? I said, no, I don't even use black pepper in my food. So I don't know what it is. It's my twist, my soul. You go into the food, you know?
Yeah, but it does make sense what you're saying, because when I was in Mexico, in the restaurant, we cooked a dish with pork feet. And we also cook pork feet here. And it's the same way. You put it in water with a couple of spices and onions for a couple of hours and just let it cook until it's very tender. And still, there was a difference, because the way you serve it, the way it's accompanied with things, that's where the difference is, I think. It's not always the way you're cooking it, but everything around it that gives it that certain twist. And I think what you're saying is a great example of just that. But obviously, Beirut Nights, Corona happened, and you had to rethink the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that when you already had an idea for the book, or is that when you sat down and was like, well, here's a little bit of time. We've got a month that we're going to be closed by the government. Let's write a book.
Well, it was longer than a month.
Well, it started with, what was it, 2 weeks?
No, the book was always a dream. When I got into the cooking world, it was really because I wanted to have a cookbook, but I also wanted to be a respected chef. So,
And was it always... Did you always think of having a Lebanese
no,
cookbook?
no, not at all. I just said I wanted to be a chef, and I wanted to be like a respected chef, because I grew up watching these...
Chef, yes, check.
Yeah.
Did that, then you quit. So, chef, take the thing back off.
No, you don't take the thing back off. You finish. I mean, you learn how to ride a bike.
Exactly.
You
still
do,
know.
yeah. You walk into a kitchen, you're a chef. It's fine. I mean, okay, I didn't spend 40 years with a limp in a kitchen, but I mean, I can be a chef. And so, no, I didn't quit in that sense. Like I said, I mean, it was a very conscious choice to focus on family. But I was already thinking about it, and the book was always a dream. It was almost like a running joke with the chefs, like, Ghina, if you want to write a book, you don't need to go through all of this. Like, it's fine. Just go and make your book.
Yeah, start writing.
No, and I thought, no, I cannot have a book until I'm respected as a chef. It's the way I look at things, I don't know. It's just the way I am. I mean, there's certain chefs that you look at them and you see, and they create recipes for you, and they give you tips, and you're like, oh, wow, okay. And you help people because you're giving them real advice,
So the book was always an idea, just
always.
How and what was unclear.
Unclear.
But then Corona helped you find that focus.
It helped me find the focus, and it also helped me start my little company, Sur, which, like I said, it starts Sur, the Phoenician root. So it's kind of like, I felt like, okay, the events are fantastic, they're great, but I don't want to become an event manager, or that's not my passion. It's extremely difficult it's not an easy business. And I thought, okay, but I need to place something here on the tables. Like, what am I selling? Am I marketing myself? Am I marketing the event? What am I marketing, in fact? And that's when I started to think, okay, I need to create a brand. I eventually would like to have my products on shelves, Lebanese products sourced from Lebanon, and some made here, So it's all part of the plan. And then Corona happened, which helped me focus, actually.
Because is that also the time when you focused mostly on Sur?
Yes.
And that was products and food boxes,
yes.
if I remember correctly.
Absolutely, and I still do them.
So the food boxes, how did that go?
It's going really well, and but I haven't done like big advertising campaigns. So now it's really word of mouth.
And just to understand, it's similar to what companies like Foodbox or HelloFresh are doing, or is it different?
It's different, because basically if you have a group of 10 or more people, you can order this box, and this is very specifically Lebanese that I do. And so basically all the work that I spoke to you about, like that my mothers and aunts would spend days, basically I put all that work into these boxes. I pack things very nicely, little vacuum bags, instructions, and basically you can have your full buffet at home, and I give you everything in the boxes, and anyone can do it.
So anyone can have their own Lebanese
That's
party
it.
at home, basically.
With the vine leaves that you put, and I also give the plates, and I give the garniture in separate boxes. So everything, the vine leaves, the bread, the hummus, the dips, the olive oil, A to Z.
Easy.
Feast, yeah.
Yeah. So people don't have to buy your book, they have to buy a box.
Box on the book and come to the dinner.
But it makes it easy for people to offer the experience
Yes.
without having to cook 3-4 days.
Yes.
So that makes a lot of sense. But I thought it was important to talk about the difference with the other ones I mentioned, because they offer weekly menus and offer all the products, which is completely different from what you do, but it's still a box between brackets.
I love what they do, and even me as a chef, I haven't used them. Sometimes I use a food bag, but other than that, it's a great concept. This is just more like a catering experience without the
caterer,
staff, without the caterer being at your house.
Exactly. So you can still kind of say that you've done it yourself.
That's it.
As a
No,
host.
really, yeah,
Exactly.
of course. That was
Exactly.
one of the first articles written about it in the TED. I had a nice interview there. So talking specifically about the box, Sur and the boxes.
And then you also made a couple of products, amongst which hummus.
Yes.
Was that the first product you released under the Sur label?
Yes. That and the boxes.
Yeah.
So-
but now you have a couple more products already.
And I'm working on a few, but I'm not going to put them online until I'm fully ready.
Okay. So for now, everything is online, is on your website.
Yes.
And you ship to people, or do
I
they have
do.
to come pick up?
No, I ship also. But I'm working on, it's about freshness, you understand? So it's a whole development. And again, it's me and a very, small team that I work with on and off. So it's step by step.
And the dream, you said, is to have your products in supermarkets.
Yeah,
That's a big goal, I think.
big. I like big goals. And maybe it's just another one of my fixations, and maybe it'll end up coming out as something completely different. Maybe I'll be the one selling them and producing them.
Because like in supermarkets, you start to see these ethnic aisles.
Yes.
And sometimes what is in there is not exactly a good representation of certain cuisines. So that's a big challenge to change that as well. But step by step, it could work.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how to go about, or is it still just a dream?
No, I've spoken to a lot of people. I have a lot of support, but it's a whole process. That becomes something completely different when you're giving over the production to big production facilities.
Exactly,
It becomes,
because now you're making hummus in your atelier in Antwerp. Yeah, if you want to do it for, what is it, 2,000 Deleuze supermarkets, that's a different scale.
Yeah,
You're not
and I don't know if it's
you're not
gonna be
have enough
hummus
with your
either.
one Thermomix.
yeah, but I just don't even know if it's going to be hummus, because I know that hummus changes after an
we're
hour.
just using it as an example,
Yeah.
Obviously.
It changes taste very. So there's so many other things I would like to experiment with, but the market also has to be ready. And my aim with Sur, and maybe you noticed on the branding, is that I would like to be a gourmet. So there's mainstream, and maybe that probably makes a lot more money. But again, like everything that I do, it's just personal, and what I love and what I appreciate are gourmet items. Like even if it's, I don't know if
think
that's
that's
chili
also-
sauce.
I think that's also, behind you is chili sauce.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay, so like even a chili sauce, a good quality, just one, and yes, you pay, I don't know, 5 times more, but then you get a good chili sauce. And I'd rather have one good product in a supermarket that can stay, and it's about, like I said, the heritage and the roots, and to put yourself on the map.
I think it also ties back to how you worked in 2
Yes.
Michelin star kitchens, where you really started to appreciate product.
Yes.
Where it's not just about whatever salad is available, but the best tasting salad. I think that's a continuation of where you learn
Yeah.
things. How you
And
learn
home.
to look at the world, but
Yeah.
then exactly in a different type of environment.
Yeah. And home.
Yeah.
I grew up with foodies.
Yeah.
Everyone's a foodie in the family, so you can't imagine the talks.
So the talks are probably like, oh, but this farmer has better cheese than that farmer.
Yes. And no, get the meat from there, and that olive oil, and it's very specific. It's beautiful. And you have that, and I find it so fascinating, and you probably see it in Mexico too, is that it's there is refinement. I mean, even if the people they from all different walks of life, there is such refinement in knowing, like even someone who doesn't have that much money will know that they want specifically that olive oil. I mean, there's such culture in that.
Mm-hmm.
They know to buy the meat from there and to cook it specifically in that. It's beautiful. How refined, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I find exciting.
That's what I find exciting as well, like finding the best product and then showcasing the best side of that product is one of the it's also about respecting the product, because that's the best thing you can do to it. There's nothing worse than having a really good quality Wagyu and then just cooking it à point.
Oh,
it's just not showcasing what the product can do. It's not respecting the product in a way. Same thing with getting high quality vegetables and then burning them in the oven. It's not showing respect to your product either.
True.
So there's a lot of ideas. I feel like there's also an idea for a second book already.
Absolutely.
The book's been out for a while now. How did people respond to it? Did you expect that response, or was it better than what you expected?
It was better, I think. It was better in the sense that it's not like I'm looking at numbers. For me, the amount of people that reach out, and when I have a signing, the amount of people that show up, the curiosity, is it towards me? Is it towards our cuisine? I think it's like a mix of both. There's a genuine interest, and I find that it's extremely satisfying. You know, I was in Ghent a couple of days ago for a signing. In Leuven, I had like a fully booked demo. I have 3 signings coming up. I mean, things are happening. I'm meeting a lot of different people. A lot of doors are opening. So it's a fantastic, I'm very, very pleased. I'm pleased with my publisher too.
So that's all going the direction you
absolutely,
never hoped it would go even.
They gave me also the freedom, you know. They didn't tell me you have to do this. I chose the color. I was able to, you know, I worked with a fantastic co-author. Her name is Sophie Peperstraat. And because I wrote the book in English and she translated it into Dutch, but also added her magic of words. She's a great writer. And so all of this is just, it's the wonderful project, really. And the next book, I'm hoping to do more dishes that are, let's say, even easier. This was the classics, the classic Lebanese. And I feel like maybe the second will have these other influences that I spoke about during my dinners, where there's like a mix again, you know?
But I think you have to start somewhere. And if you start somewhere, then the classics are always a
there.
good introduction, because, you know, some people say the classics never go out of style.
That's it. They don't go out of style. You just use it as, you should have the book, you know, you want to learn how to make Lebanese food, just have the book and...
Exactly. It's like in French cuisine, which you've touched on, you start with stocks.
Yeah.
And then you can go to everything else. But if you don't have a good basics, then what does it matter?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So for all the products and more information on your chef's table, people can go to the website,
yes.
surfood.be,
yes.
I think.
Yeah.
If people want to keep up to date with all your book stuff and everything else that you do, like signings, etc., where can people find you?
Usually on Instagram. Most of my, and the publisher themselves, like now the Standard Book Handle, and the bookshops themselves and the publisher usually advertise everything that has to do with the signings.
Yep. So more information can be found on your Instagram account.
Yes.
Then. So that's
which is on my name, Ghina Bazzi.
Easy enough to find.
Yeah, hopefully.
In the near future, what will make you very happy when it comes to Lebanese cuisine in Belgium?
More restaurants. But more high-end restaurants. It's like in London and in Paris, you have very high-end Lebanese cuisine. And even more specialized, like one Lebanese place that makes a good shawarma, but like really specializes in that. And I think it will take time. And I'd love to see more gourmet products on shelves. You know, that shows like in the beginning you could find the regular pasta. Now you can find every type. And now you have even in not the Delhaize, the other one, the Carrefour, you can even find things that you find on shelves that are bestsellers in Italy. So it's fantastic. I love that. So it will take time, but I believe that these products should come from Lebanon or come with the know-how from Lebanon, just so that it can be shared properly, you know?
I think you're doing a good job starting here with that, and I'm looking forward to see where this is going.
Me too.
I noticed that there's no lack of ideas with you.
No.
And certainly not a lack of enthusiasm. So
No,
I'm very
absolutely.
happy you came on the podcast and
Thank
shared more
you.
about Lebanese cuisine. And I'm looking forward to try some of the products on your website soon.
Yes, next time I'll bring food.
That's a
The
deal.
meza, the box.
With the second book, we're gonna have
Yes.
the box with us.
Yes,
then.
yes.
All right, then I can cook and you can tell me how I did.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fantastic.
Thank
Tina,
you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Everybody who is interested, all the information, as always, is going to be below in the show notes, so you can just link up and connect and learn more about the Lebanese cuisine.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Bedankt om te luisteren naar Over Eten. Vond je het een leuke aflevering? Deel deze podcast dan zeker met andere foodies. Tag me gerust op Facebook of Instagram via @overetenpodcast. Honger naar meer? Dat is mijn maandelijkse nieuwsbrief vol eet, drink en luisterplezier. Schrijf je in via de website, dat is www.overetenpodcast.be. Bedankt en hopelijk tot binnenkort.